Anthony, thank you so much for coming and doing this interactive deep dive with me and the amazing ladies that are here.
Yeah.
This is a second in a series that I'm creating from a spin-off from my Ignited Entrepreneurs podcast. Is I'm recognizing the amazing people that I've connected with over the last couple of years, Anthony being one of them, because he was on my podcast probably in year one, I think, in the very beginning. And what I want to do with this series is share a more interactive opportunity for people to learn from these experts that I've personally had the opportunity to get to know and learn from and then share. But I feel like in the podcast, it's just a two-person conversation. And this allows us a chance to expand that and have other people join in the conversation and have their questions answered from the experts. So with that all being said, Anthony Hamilton, welcome so much to Interactive Deep Dives.
Well, thank you. And trust me when I say the pleasure is mine for being here and having these lovely participants here to share what's going on with them, and maybe maybe we can all learn something in this process. So maybe I can ask Tracy, what is it that you'd like to get out of this session today?
I don't know. I'm open to anything, right? I'm curious what lessons you have for me, and yeah, I don't know. Just I'm excited to be here. I love everything that Jessica does. So yeah, I always learn from the guests that she has on, so I'm excited to see what I learned from you today.
Okay, great. Well, what we're going to talk about is basically, Jessica mentioned my book. So my book is Mind, Time, and Power. And I wrote that, I started to write it in about 1985. I finally finished it in 1999. So it took me about 14 or 15 years to put it together and to write it. I'm very proud of it. It's affecting and helping a lot of people. And what it's about is a new paradigm, a new way of looking at our mind and how the mind works. And so what I say in there is that your mind acts like a time machine. Now, people are used to thinking like, oh, your mind is a tape recorder, your mind is like a computer, But I think a much better analogy is that your mind is like a time machine, because you have information coming into your mind from the past and from the future. Where you're going to have, what you're going to have for dinner tonight, perhaps, or when you go shopping, what you're going to buy. So there's a part of you that sort of looks into the future. There's a part of you that looks into the past. So we generally call that memory. I can remember the past, right? But in this new paradigm, this new model of consciousness that I develop in this book says that it's not so much a recording of the past, it's a connection to the past, right? So we're connected to the past through the pipeline of our imagination, kind of the same way that we're connected through the internet over through this Zoom call, right? So each of us is connected now. So I say something and you can respond, and you say something, I can respond. So the information is going both ways. So that's the model of consciousness that I develop in my book, that says, you can get information from the past, you can get information from the future by sending a part of your mind, which is your attention, to that place. So if I say, what did you have for dinner last night? Part of your mind sort of goes back there and says, oh yeah, I cooked this, and my husband brought a fish home, so I cooked the fish and the kids loved it, that sort of thing. So you're getting information from that time. It's not so much a recording that you're playing back, it's a connection that's giving you information from that place. So what that means is that your past is always available to you, and you can get information from it. Now, the key thing that we're going to talk about today is changing your past. Because people tend to think, well, the past happened. You can't do anything about it. You can't change it. I've had these things that happen in the past that were good. Some things happen in the past that were negative. And of course, the things that were negative, they still affect us, right? The failures that we have, the emotional scars that we suffered, they affect us. And so the idea then that we can go back in our mind and we can revisit those negative, so-called negative events and shift them around a little bit, reframe them and take the sting off of it and shift it from being negative to being neutral or maybe even positive. That's a powerful piece of information, a piece of technology that we're going to talk about today. So what I am curious about is if you, Tracy, or you, Emily, you have something that you would call a negative event, a failure, something that when you think about it, makes you feel bad, that you would like to change, that you would like to transform. Emily, do you have something like that?
Yes, for sure. Sorry, I didn't turn on the camera, but now I can see everybody.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi, Anthony.
Hi.
That's a good question. I would say, I'm definitely working through it, if I can be honest. I think failure for me, I worked for corporate America for a long time. I mean, 10 years, not really long, but for me, I think it's a long time. I think when it comes to failure, sometimes I feel like I did not have, how to put it this way. Sorry, I'm just having trouble because I used to be I feel really bad about it. And now I don't think about it as a bad thing anymore. So I'm trying to put the right words to describe the situation. But I think for me, if, the old Emily of looking at things I would be like, oh my God, she jumped around quite a bit. She doesn't stick with one job because she couldn't really deal with the negativity in her world. So she kind of have the courage to okay, I don't need that. I'm just gonna, move on and find something different. So, and then while I was going through that process, I kind of beat myself down a little bit. I was like, oh, what's wrong with me? How come you cannot just stick it out and, trying to improve upon, even though you being beat up in your environment, right? Because I think, Anthony, for the longest time, I didn't really love myself. I didn't really have self-compassion, but now I finally realized that that was not the case. So I don't see that as a failure anymore, but I would love to hear from your perspective and how to kind of, improve upon, because I'm going through kind of self-transformation and trying to better at things. And I don't want to see that as a negativity and carry that on my shoulders anymore. But yeah, I would love to hear from your perspective.
Okay. Well, what was negative about it?
I think I got a lot of bad comments from friends and family, oh, how come you cannot, stick it out? How come you move to a different company every other year? What's wrong with you?
So was this a job that you quit, or?
Yeah, I quit. Yep. And then so people was oh, you're not able to hold on to a job, kind of some negativity around it. But at the same
time, why did you feel bad about the fact that you quit?
Because I feel in society, I feel a lot of people want you to hold on to something for a long time, right? Look at my parents' generation. They only have maybe 2 or 3 jobs in their career, right? But for me, I'm already on my 7th. So I just feel and sometimes I feel they don't really understand what I'm going through. And I was trying to convince them why I'm doing what I was doing.
Okay, so how would your friends describe that process of yours of taking a job and quitting and taking a job and quitting and moving on to another one. What did they say about that?
That I'm not loyal. I'm willing to give up so quickly. That maybe there's something wrong with you. Maybe you're not capable of doing certain things. Or maybe your mental health is not strong enough to like stick it out.
Right.
Like just got that kind of mentality.
Right. Okay. So basically that process that you went through where you changed jobs, that was evidence that you were somehow you quit, you were weak, you didn't have courage, you didn't have persistence, right? So it's understandable if you describe it that way that you're going to feel bad, right? Especially if those words are coming from your parents or your friends or your family and their opinion means something to you, right? So what if you change the metaphor? What if you change the metaphor like, are you Chinese?
Yes, I am.
So yeah, my wife is Chinese.
Oh.
So you've been to a Chinese restaurant, right? You've been to a Chinese smorgasbord where they have all kinds of food laid out. So you take a plate and you go down one side and back up the other side, right? And so you take a little, maybe you take a couple of dumplings, you take a little bit of vegetables, you take, maybe a chicken foot or a chicken wing or something, right? Well, what would you say if you moved from the dumplings to the fried rice and your friend said, "You're such a loser, why don't you stick with the dumplings? You got no persistence, you're quitting, you've only been here for 10 seconds, you're already moving on to the rice, Well, would that make you feel bad? Well, my guess is it wouldn't. It would seem silly, right?
Yeah, very silly.
You're not supposed to stand and just eat dumplings. I mean, you're supposed to sample everything, right?
Yeah.
You choose what you like.
Right.
So for you to choose a job for your own reasons, because you want to experience something, you want to learn something, it's kind of like a smorgasbord, right? You're in a Chinese restaurant and say, "Oh, I haven't seen that before. Maybe I'll try that one." Try it. If you like it, you might have another one. But if you don't like it, okay, you move on to something else. Try the jewar or something, right? Try the pig's ears, So if you think of life and your experience like a smorgasbord, then you've got a perfect right, in my opinion, this is my opinion, right? To sample what you like and try something new. And if you don't like it, okay, stop, move on to something else, right? So you could just as easily say that practice of yours of trying this job, staying at it for a while, learning something, moving on to a new one, trying that one, learning something, moving on to another one, that takes a lot of courage, right? I mean, anybody can take a job that they don't like and stick at it just because they're afraid to leave. Well, that's in a sense being kind of a coward, right? But if you have enough resilience and you have enough courage to say, "Hey, I can stand on my own 2 feet. I know I can get another job. I'm a valuable person and I can move on, and it's okay," then the fact that you have the courage to do that indicates or could indicate that you actually have more courage than other people, that you have more flexibility than other people, right? Now, here's the point that Jessica and I were talking in one of our previous sessions about changing the meaning of things, right? Nothing means anything except how you describe it, right? So for you to leave one job and take another job, that can mean, oh, you're an adventurous person who likes to try different things and you have a lot of courage to do that. Or it can mean, oh, you're a loser because you don't have the persistence to take a job and then stick at it, and you don't have any perseverance. So the main thing to understand is you can choose whatever you want it to mean, right? And of course, part of that courage is being able to take the negativity that comes from your parents or your uncle or your auntie who says, when I got a job, I stayed there for 40 years, right? Well, it's okay. That's for them, right? Everybody's different. To me, that's a great display of confidence and courage and flexibility that you have that ability to do that, right? You're not afraid to leave a place if it stops feeding you, and move on to something else, take another challenge. And so this is something you've already started to do from what you said, right? You used to consider it negative. Now it's not so negative, it's kind of neutral. But no, I think you deserve you deserve some applause, for having the guts to do that. And your parents won't understand, right? They say there's an expression, something about a hero was unrecognized in his own country, right? And it's kind of like that with your family, I see most of my family came from the service, right? My father was in the Navy, all three of my brothers were in the service. But I decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? So I made my living, writing and traveling and teaching and doing workshops and that sort of thing. And a lot of my family still think I'm crazy, right? Because I didn't have a long-term career in the armed forces. Well, I didn't want it, right? So sometimes the people that you want their approval, they don't give it to you. So you just have to say, okay, water off a duck's back, let it go, right? The main thing is what you think of yourself. And obviously, you have a good view of yourself. So I applaud you for doing that. And also I applaud you for, having the courage to change. As you said when you started talking, that you've already made some shifts, So thinking of life as a smorgasbord, which is not my idea, right? I can't remember who said it originally. I think it was Rosalind Russell or something, who was like an actress from way back in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. She said life is a smorgasbord, right? So if you think that life is a smorgasbord, then of course the idea is to sample as much as you can. Right, Tracy? I can see Tracy nodding away. Any comments, Emily?
No, thank you so much. I think that's really helpful. Yeah, self-compassion is something that I'm working on right now, and also how to celebrate, myself and
Right.
how to acknowledge myself, right? Like the kind of what you're saying, like how to turn the negativity that I used to carry, right, to something that like, hey, good job, Emily, you're persistent, you're courageous, right? Like, finding a job is not easy. Like you have to be persistent about it, right? And then
that's right.
while you're like looking for a new job, you still have to keep your old job. Like that takes a lot of work to be able to have a breakthrough. So yeah, I think that's kind of the language I have to keep, the narrative that I have to keep telling myself, like, hey, get the bright side. Like you did a lot to get to where you're at today. And
exactly. Now I'll tell you a trick that we've been talking about in our other podcast, and that is we have a journal, right? We have a workbook. So the thing that I learned years and years ago, and if you look around, you're going to find that a lot of people use this technique, right, of writing things down. And a lot of people use their journal like a diary, you know, oh, I went to the store today and I got a haircut, you know. Well, to me, that's kind of a waste of time. But if you write down specific ideas like why I am a courageous person, why I admire myself, well, you know, why does that series of jobs that I had show me that I have courage and confidence and self-esteem? And whenever you get an answer to that question, write it down, right? Because what happens is we tend to forget these ideas. Ideas, they come and they go, right? A famous broadcaster named Earl Nightingale, he said, ideas are like slippery fish, you know? If you don't gaff them and keep them, they're going to go. They're going to swim away and they're gone forever, right? So that's the value of having that list, you know. So if you take a sheet of paper and say, you know, why I'm a courageous person, why I'm proud of myself, right? I'm proud of myself for doing this and that and the other thing. And then when you get another idea like that, oh, I'm proud of myself because of this. Okay, write that down too. And then by the time you've got, you know, 5 or 10 or 15 answers to that question, then it's going to have an effect on you, right? You're going to be able to maintain that feeling of confidence and self-esteem, and not get caught up in, oh, so-and-so says this and so-and-so says that, you know. So writing those ideas down is really powerful. Great, thanks. Tracy, are you still there? Or you were doing the laundry or something?
Yeah, the life of a mom. And anyways, I was having ideas too. I'm just putting up my vision board.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
I have ADD. I was diagnosed on my birthday, December 17th. I turned 40 and was diagnosed with ADD.
Oh, wow, congratulations.
Thank you. But anyways,
I don't know why, but you know, I'm just saying congratulations, because why not? You know, why not look at it as a positive thing, right?
But it was validating, it really is. Anyways, yeah, so sorry, mom life, I was doing laundry and everything.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, for me, I also suffer with low self-esteem. I've had a lot of trauma in my life. And yeah, so just changing the way that I think. Here, this is why I was doing my vision board, but this is what my word of the year is. I will turn it around, bear with me. So confidence.
Oh, okay, great.
Right? And it's in big bold letters so that I see it every day, and I have to get it on my wall, which is kind of rare. But yeah, I suffer with self-esteem issues also, Emily, so I totally relate. Jessica knows that. She's helped me immensely, but yeah, some of the trauma and like different things that I'm working on is extensive, but we had a house fire back in July of 2018, 19, doesn't matter, a couple years ago. And so just the smell of fire, I have PTSD from it. Thankfully, everyone was fine. The house didn't burn down, anything. There was huge blessings that I won't go into right now, but for me, just because it's winter and it's been really cold, people are using their fireplaces, which then I smell and it triggers a fight or flight response. I get anxiety. Because I found the fire in my son's bedroom, I opened the door. So just, they can't sleep with their doors closed. There's a whole thing around that I'm working with my counselor on. But just retraining my brain to enjoy the smell of like campfire or fireplaces again, instead of having that fight or flight. So every time I get it, even when I don't smell it, my brain says I smell it. Yeah, just retraining that to be like, it's fine, you know, it's a good thing. So
yeah, retraining is the key word, right? So when you smelled that smoke, what did you do?
Well, I ended up finding the fire in my son's room. It was an accident anyways. But yeah, so there was no sign of a fire in our house. I just smelled the smoke.
Mhm.
And yeah, so when I opened the door and saw the flames, it was very traumatic, right? The door handle wasn't warm, which I didn't even register until
Yeah.
recently that I opened the door without checking. But anyway, yes. So for me, just my body goes into fight or flight or freeze. Like there's many
So,
times
yeah, sorry. So what did you do?
when I found it.
Yeah, when you smelled the smoke and you
Oh,
noticed the fire.
Well, yeah, I like freaked out. I screamed at my landlords that the house was on fire, and they came up and tried to put it out, but it was not enough for what they had to put it out. So I called 911 immediately. But I ended up having to be seen by the ambulance because I was having a panic attack.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, why did you have a panic attack?
Well, because I found flames. It was very traumatic.
Well, was it the flames or was it the fact that you were scared for your kids?
Well, yeah, I was scared for my kids. Yeah. And
There's a difference, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if you smelled smoke and you didn't feel panic for your kids' safety, that would seem weird to me.
Right.
So
Okay.
what I'm hearing you saying, this is my honest opinion here. When you smelled smoke, you took action.
I did. Yeah.
I mean, you jumped into action, right? You called, screamed for the landlord, you called 911, you opened your children's door, you got them out of there, you know. So
Thankfully, they weren't in the house. No one was in the
oh, they
house.
weren't, okay, yeah.
No.
So basically you took action, right?
Yeah.
So the panic attack that you had, I'm sure, was because you thought, you know, you might lose the house or lose your apartment or whatever it was, right? Lose your life, you know.
Right.
So you know, that's perfectly appropriate. I mean, it makes perfect sense that when you smell smoke in the house, that's scary, right? I mean, it's good to panic when you smell smoke.
That's true.
I remember once I used to have a cabin on top of Grouse Mountain, and I used to go hiking in the woods around, you know, behind Grouse Mountain, right?
Right.
And if you go hiking behind Grouse Mountain, there's nothing between you and Kamloops, right? I mean, it's just wilderness, right? Even though people think, oh, hey, it's North Vancouver, you know. Well, I was hiking there one day and I saw a bear.
Oh no.
I can remember the feeling of seeing that bear go through my body right now. It was like, you know, like an electric shock, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's natural. That's normal, right? You see a bear when you're out by yourself in the woods, like, you know. So I slowly I turned around, walked out of there, and you know he didn't see me, so it was great, right? So to me, the smell of smoke could mean that you're a sensitive person and you act when you sense danger, right?
True. Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing.
That's
I
true.
mean, if you had ignored it, let's look at the alternative, right? You smell smoke, you say, it's probably nothing, you know. You go back to, you know, washing the dishes or whatever, and then the place burns down.
Right.
Well, people would say, hey, you know, Tracy, why didn't you do something when you smelled smoke? Well, you did do something, right?
Right.
So smoke, I mean, obviously smoke means, you know, danger, right? If there's a fire. But if you're in a campfire, you know, and you make sure that it's safe and it's contained, you know, and it's not going to spread and do any damage, then it can also mean, you know, relaxation, being with family and cooking food, you know, stuff like that, right? So again, like I mentioned to Emily, you know, you can just take a sheet of paper and write down, you know, I'm a sensitive person, you know, I take action when I sense danger, and that gives me confidence, right?
That's true. Yeah.
or not, I mean, if you didn't act, people would think you were, you were nuts, right? So the idea then is that we can take an event like that and we can feel good about it, right?
Right.
Like, don't you feel good about the fact that you took action, called 911, called the landlord?
Yep.
Right? So that can be the meaning that you put on that, right?
Right.
Rather than, oh, I freak out, or, something like that. Say, no, when I freaked out, it was appropriate, right? I mean, it was a fire in my house. I mean, it's perfectly appropriate. So I act, I don't mess around, man. When I sense danger, I do something, right? So to me, that could be a reason why you feel confident about your sensitivity, your senses, right? And like I said to Emily, take a sheet of paper, write it down. Why does this situation make me feel proud? See, here's the thing, right? That rather than feeling like you're freaking out, like you can't keep yourself under control or something like that, you can put any meaning on it that you want. So why not put the feeling on that you're proud of what you did? And
Absolutely.
in my experience, it's just a habit, right? Your first reaction was panic, so you think, oh, I smell smoke and I panic. Well, you're supposed to panic when you smell smoke. So if you say, why does my action when I smelled smoke in my house make me feel proud? And you just write down whatever comes to you. I'm proud that I called the landlord. I'm proud that I took action. I'm proud that I didn't just freak out and run outside. I'm proud that I called 911. I did the sensible thing. Then what will happen for you, and it'll happen pretty quickly, in a matter of days or so, that whenever you think about that smoke experience, the first thing that comes up for you is the feeling of pride. Right? I'll give you an example of what I did, just to kind of give you some other angles maybe on this idea of changing the meaning, right? One of the things I did in my life that I feel really good about was I stopped smoking.
Oh, good job.
Because I used to smoke, right? I used to smoke. I mean, I started smoking when I was about 10 years old. I'd go to the bus stop and pick up cigarette butts off the street. Any of you ever done that? Well, I did, along with my friends. That's kind of what we did, right?
I have a 10-year-old. Scares me.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you might be doing that too, But anyway, we did it kind of as a joke, right? And then a few years later, when I moved to a different town, and I started smoking because my friends were smoking, and I thought it would help me fit in, right? So that was the reason that I started smoking originally, was I wanted to be, I wanted to fit in, right? But it pretty quickly became a habit. And so because I'm the kind of person that sort of gets intensely involved in things, I got to the point after a few years, after, some pretty stressful jobs and traveling in Europe and having all sorts of dangerous experiences happen to me, that I ended up smoking like 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes every day, right? So I was smoking like crazy. And so when I decided to quit, it was tough. A lot of these ideas that I'm talking about now of changing the way, changing what things mean and that, changing your focus, I learned in this, process of quitting smoking, right? So quitting smoking to me is a big source of pride now for me. But at one time, it was just a huge challenge and it drove me crazy, right? And so I remember one of the things that I noticed was that I had considered cigarettes to be my friend. I mean, I remember even saying, I can always depend on the cigarette. Doesn't matter what happens. If I have a cigarette, it's going to make me feel good, Well, that was a kind of a dangerous thought. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I was smoking, right? Well, when I finally quit, I quit basically because I realized it didn't make any sense. It was costing me money. And over the long term, it could be physically dangerous, right? Cause all kinds of different diseases. So I quit. And one of the things I noticed was when I first quit and I first stopped smoking, when I was with my friends and they were smoking, I would feel like I was missing out. I was jealous of my friends, right? Hey, they're still smoking. They seem okay. How come I'm suffering here trying to fight this habit, struggling and straining to try and do something which these people are doing and enjoying, right? So I thought to myself, wait a second now, I got to change that thought, because if I continue thinking these thoughts, I'm going to end up smoking again, right? So I thought, well, okay, well, what else could it mean, right? So I took a sheet of paper and I wrote down, when I see somebody smoking, it means they're not as aware as I am. They don't have the self-esteem that I have. They don't have the courage to tackle a difficult thing that I do, right? They're not as conscious and not as aware as I am. Now, I'm not saying this to put the people down, because they were all friends of mine, but I just wanted to change the meaning, right? So what I found was, like within a day, probably, when I saw them smoking, I would say to myself, they don't know what they're doing to themselves. They don't realize how bad it is, right? But I do, and I'm smart enough to quit, right? So that idea of smoking means I'm missing out on something good, to they're missing out on something good, that little switch changed everything for me, right? And the funny thing is, this was 1975. Well, it happens today, like, well, not today, but yesterday. Nobody's smoking right now. I was looking out the window yesterday across the street, and there was a guy standing on the sidewalk smoking a cigarette. And I felt good. I thought, man, I quit, So that idea of seeing somebody smoke, I just consciously changed it from meaning I'm missing out on something good to, man, am I glad and am I proud of myself for doing that, right? So you can do that with anything, right? Whether it's changing jobs, like Emily was talking about, or thinking about the smell of smoke, when you get to the place where somebody reminds you of that fire and you feel good, you feel proud of yourself for the actions that you took, then, you can stop worrying about it. It's a good thing, right? So that's the idea, right? You can, because nothing means anything. Jessica and I were talking about this last week. No event or nothing means anything, but everything means something. In other words, your mind will automatically put a meaning on it. That's what the mind does, right? Your mind will put a meaning on it. And if you're in a bad mood, the meaning can be negative, Oh, that means I'm dumb. That means I'm stupid. That means I don't have the courage. That means I'm not persistent. That means I'm wasting my time, right, Emily? Well, why have it think that? That just makes you feel bad, But when you realize, and as far as I'm concerned, in all the research I've done, probably 98% of people don't realize that you can do this, that you can just take an idea and say, okay, I don't want it to mean that. I want it to mean this, right? And all you need is 2 or 3 reasons, and your mind goes, oh, okay. it can mean that then, you know? So Anthony Robbins talks about a belief being a feeling of certainty about the meaning of something, right? So, for example, with Emily, you know, she changes jobs, and if 3 or 4 of her relatives say, oh, that was a bad thing to do, then you can easily think, oh, that was a bad thing to do, right? But if you have 2 or 3 reasons why it was a good thing, you know, life is a smorgasbord. I'm learning all different kinds of things. I have the courage and the freedom to do what I want to do and learn what I want to learn. Then suddenly it's like, no, for me, it was a good thing to change that job, right? And for you, Tracy, all you need is 2 or 3 ideas why it's positive that when I smelled that smoke, it means I took action, that I had courage, you know. Think about that for a few minutes, and pretty soon your mind will go, okay, yeah, that's a good meaning for it, you know. So I see Emily's left. She said, thanks very much. So I really appreciate her being here today. And I appreciate you being here too, Tracy. Thanks very much. Any comments or questions, Jessica, Tracy?
I'm always so happy to be here and listen to you because I learn things every single time. So yeah, I'm just grateful for you for being here. So, and I love what you said to both of the ladies. Like it really does. Like this is what I'm learning so much from you. It's just these little shifts that we can make that just create massive change. And I mean, I've been kind of watching Tracy through this and kind of watching your expressions, and I can see there might be a little shift that's happening there for you. What do you think, Tracy?
Yeah,
You saved you home. Come on.
that's true.
Or at least you took action. I don't know. I'm not sure what the final result was, but you certainly did the right thing.
Yeah, it was thankfully contained to my son's room. It did not get into the walls or the ceiling. So very thankful. God used it as a good thing. There's been many blessings that has come from that house fire. So
there you go.
Just thinking about it that way too is definitely a mindset shift. Anyways, yeah. So for me, I appreciate that. It's nice. Like my word of the year is confident, and that gives me confidence, right? To be able to be like, what I did. I don't celebrate my accomplishments enough. It's something that drives my husband crazy. He's like, I tell you every day that you're amazing. When are you going to start to believe it? And so honestly, that I'm starting to believe it, you know, just being mindful to get up in the morning and be like, you know what, I am who I am and I'm not sorry for it. I honestly think and believe that when I turned 40, my mindset shifted.
Yeah, well, those pivotal years, you know, the 30, 40, 50, whatever, you know, they sort of, or they can make us kind of focus on this journey that we're on called life, right? So you said something a minute ago. I just want to feed it back to you because it's so important. You said, I'm learning to believe.
Right.
Now that's exactly right. That's a learning process, right?
Yeah.
So this idea, so this idea from Anthony Robbins again, you know,
he's amazing.
He is amazing. Yeah. A belief is a feeling of certainty about the meaning of something. So, you know, if you say, okay, well, it could mean this, it could mean that, pardon me.
It's all good. I get it.
Yeah.
I have peppermint tea in my cup.
There you go. It could mean this, it could mean that. That's kind of 50-50, right? But if you consciously, pardon me, if you consciously think of reasons why it means one rather than the other.
Right.
It doesn't take much, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 reasons, and your mind goes, okay, flip, right? It means that. Right. So the idea of learning to feel confident, learning to believe that you're confident, it is a learning process. And you have to feed the process. Like you have to consciously say, okay, I'm going to, you know, take a sheet of paper. At least that's my technique. It's the best technique I've learned.
It'll
take a
help
sheet of
me.
paper and just write down, why do I have confidence in myself? And every time you think of an idea, write it down. And then when you've got 10, 15, 20 reasons to feel confident in yourself, you'll find that you believe it, right?
Right.
And so when you say, I'm learning to believe, that's absolutely right. You're learning to believe. And you can choose to increase the rate that you're learning that belief.
Right. Definitely. Yep. And it's taken a long time. I've had, like I've said, lots of trauma. And instead of playing the victim, I'm choosing to turn that around. Like you said to Emily, and it's experiences, right? It's tools in your tool belt that you can go ahead in life and be like, okay, I went through that. I know how to handle that. I can use this here in this situation, right? Like
Right.
Emily switching jobs, exactly like you said. I know people, and I am one of those people that has had jobs that you've left and then you go somewhere else, right? And yeah, you pick up new skills. And it's the same thing with relationships, whether it's friendships or family or whatever. You're always constantly learning to handle situations differently. You know what I mean? Like my kids drive me crazy every day, but they teach me patience. Like, you know what I mean? There's less where it's like, oh my goodness, you're driving me crazy. But instead of acting like that or reacting like I do, I'm learning to take a step back for a minute and be like, okay,
Right.
you're freaking out. I can't freak out. What do you need in this moment? With my children, right? Because it's been a hard road. Jessica knows. And
raising kids is not easy. I have three,
Yeah, mine have special needs. They have ADHD and some other stuff. I think
Right.
my youngest has autism. He's definitely like a challenge, but yeah. And so, but that's teaching me that no matter what you do in life, you're going to encounter people that are going to get on your nerves, and they're just not going to be a good fit for being in your life, whether
Right.
it's family, friends, right? And so, yeah, definitely, I think that's what the pandemic has taught me as well, is that the people that are meant to be in your life are still there, whether or not you can be there for them.
Yeah. Well, you can choose your friends.
Yeah. And your family.
You can't choose your family.
But you can.
It's a little different, right? You don't have the freedom. I mean, you got the parents and you got the siblings there, but yeah, this idea. Sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say, but there comes a point when you have to reevaluate or evaluate whether they bring value to your life. You can't choose, but you can choose to have them in your life.
And time is a great, it's a great teacher, right? Because I think it was Mark Twain. He said, when I was 15 years old, I was convinced my father was the stupidest man on earth. By the time I got to be 25, I was amazed how smart he had become.
Mm-hmm.
So, you look back, and this is one of the things strange, but when you have kids, it helps to heal your relationship with your parents, right? Because now you realize, that's why my mother was doing this, Now the shoe's on the other foot. Right?
There's been many times when even my mom will say this, but there's many times when you pause and you're like, when did my mom come out of my mouth? Like that's something my mom said, you know what I mean? And it's like, oh, I get it. Dang it. I get it. I understand.
Yeah, and that doesn't go away either. The older you get, the more you remember. So I'm going to recommend that you join this community that Jessica and I are building around this process of using your mind consciously to change your thinking, change your life, so that you build step by step to make 2022 a better year, right? And Jessica has some information. We have a workbook that we can send you, and there's a morning and evening.
Did I send you the
morning and
workbook,
evening?
Tracy? I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I'll have to look.
Yeah, and there's a morning and evening visualization exercise too that we can send you that
Okay.
that you might find valuable too.
Definitely. Thank you. I
Thanks
appreciate
very
that.
much, Tracy. Great to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks
I've
for
enjoyed it.
showing up.
Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
really glad that you joined, and I
I
know,
said-
I know, and you do. You always say what you're gonna, or always do what you're gonna say you're gonna do. So, no, I
I try.
appreciate you. I'm really happy that you were here because I knew Anthony is blowing my mind. Like I'm every time we meet, because we meet every Saturday now at 10 a.m. as part of this other community that we're a part of, and every single week. I mean, I'm expanding and growing and becoming more just through exposure to Anthony's brilliance. So
Amazing.
I know for sure that you would also enjoy it. You would really get a lot out of it because I think you and I we think a lot alike where we're in that same space where we're open, right? We're open to things. So yeah, I think you would also really enjoy it. And I have a feeling Emily as well. She sent me a message earlier saying how much she said, please invite me to future ones. Mr. Hamilton is a great speaker. So I think she probably
Definitely.
also would be a
Thank
great,
you.
great fit for our other community as well. So
Yeah, this
yeah.
idea that, you know,
So
you
this-
can choose the meaning of something is really a powerful idea because normally, you know, like people don't normally tell us that, right? Something happens and we automatically go, oh, that means this. Well, it doesn't automatically mean this. You know, it can mean that. It can mean something totally different. And you can actually choose, you know. So like I say, when you get to the point where the smell of smoke makes you feel proud, then I'll have done my job, I think.
Winnie.
Okay, thanks very much, Jessica.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tracy.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on and sharing your brilliance with my community. So
Yes, I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Have a great day.
bye everyone.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.